We're in Way Media.
Right, Mr. Walters?
You see that guy over there? Now, he's an actor. The guy on the phone, he's a prize fighter. Me, I'm a cab driver. I'm the only cab driver in this place.
Good evening and welcome to Night Mr. Walters, a taxi podcast. I'm HP, your co-host, and with me as always is my co-host, Father Malone. Father Malone, how are you this evening?
HP television is a young man's game.
And they don't come much younger than the guest star we're going to talk about. I described him as impossibly young, and we'll get to there. But we're talking, of course, about Taxi Season 4, Episode 4, Jim Joins the Network. Written by David Lloyd and directed by Noam Pitlick.
Sounds fake.
Yeah, it sounds like a fake name, but he's a real guy who was both an actor and a director. So,
if you get him to say his name, he'll lose his powers, and Superman will have won the day.
Good call. Good call. Only a very narrow subsection of our audience will get that joke, but those who do will be laughing. Even now, they'll still be laughing at it.
Welcome, super nerds.
There you go. Welcome. You all are welcome here. Reminder, we're doing these shows in broadcast order and not in order of filming. We begin this episode, Father Malone, in the inside of a cab. Jim is driving two passengers. It's a man and a woman. The man is played by none other than, as I said, an impossibly young Martin Short. As we've mentioned before, he was involved in another James Brooks production, The Associates, which so he was already known to the Taxi team. That show was canceled in 1980, so this appearance would have been post cancellation. But you know, everybody knows Martin Short from Only Murders in the Building and SNL and SCTV, but this was before all of that. I think he was, I want to say he was probably 30 years old at this point. He looks like a teenager. He's so young in this.
He's a baby here. You can easily see him in Godspell when you look at this version of Martin Short.
Yeah, there's a documentary coming out on Godspell.
I'm well aware, and it's fucking about time, and I'm mad that you and I didn't make it.
It looks fantastic. I think Eugene Levy is prominently involved.
I'm sure Andrea Martin must be in there. Like every Paul Schaefer, no doubt.
Oh yeah. Well, he was the music director, was he not?
He was. I'm reading his autobiography right now.
Is it any good, or is it like a lot of like, hey, that cat could play?
It is very, very Paul Schaefer, while at the same time very informative.
It's been in my queue. I just have not had a chance to read it. Maybe I will. Anyway, the man and the woman in the back of the cab are TV executives. And Martin Short's character's name is Mitch Harris. He's trying to convince the woman that she's a good executive. She's feeling low. She's uncertain if she's qualified for the job. She's whatever. But this guy is basically trying to buck her up and saying, no, you're good. You deserve to be there and blah, blah, blah. But the woman, whose name is Janine, is nervous about something that she has to do. She finally gets the courage to tell Mitch that, okay, what I have to do is, if the ratings don't get better, I'm going to have to fire you, which sends him into kind of a little bit of a tailspin. She thanks Mitch profusely for all of his advice, and then she gets out of the cab at her stop. At this point, Mitch is despondent, and Jim, who's driving, is trying to make a little bit of small talk. Jim asks if he's in television. Jim goes on to say he's always wondered how the networks decide how to put shows on the air. Mitch replies that it's very scientific. They take into account a lot of different metrics. Jim counters by asking why they took Star Trek off the air, since that was his favorite show. His favorite show, Jim's favorite show, was Star Trek, Father Malone.
It's
peculiar, is it not?
Poetic, almost.
It's amazing.
It's as if the Star Trek people watched Taxi and saw Jim say that, and then years later went, hey, you know who'd be good?
He will be a Klingon someday. That guy would make the perfect Klingon commander.
He is the perfect Klingon commander.
He absolutely is. And we've talked already about Trek Fest, which is going on right now over on Midnight Viewing, Father Malone's podcast. We were going through all the Trek movies, and in fact, we've already gone through in exhaustive detail Star Trek 3, where Christopher Lloyd appears as Commander Krug, and in our estimation, is one of the best Klingons ever to grace the big screen. Don't take our word for it. Watch the movie, then listen to the podcast. They proceed to drive to Mitch's apartment. Continuing this small talk, by the way, before I even get to that, it's one of the best line readings, and I'm not going to do it justice, but as Jim is talking about how his favorite show is Star Trek, there's this weird line reading where he says, I've always loved Star Trek. Like, he gets this like distant look in his eyes, and there's this pause between Star Trek and everything else.
It's a distant tone in his voice. He's long gone. What I love is he's asked the question, and Martin Short is consistently trying to give him answers, but he's in a reverie about Star Trek the entire time. He's not hearing anything. And then when he gives him, eventually tries to change the subject, then he starts talking about the least favorite Star Trek character he remembers, the Romulan, who it wasn't the actor's fault.
Right. It just, he said things that no Romulan would ever say. It's very funny and very prescient, considering Christopher Lloyd would become part of the Star Trek canon in just a few years.
Considering this is an episode about Jim predicting the future. So here he might be seeing himself in Star Trek.
We should mention that, so we already had Jim the Psychic, which I believe was episode 1 of this season 4. So now we're in episode 4, and they're continuing this notion of Jim being a psychic. That's where we're headed with this. Jim asks him, are there any new shows coming out? And Mitch mentions 2 coming on tonight. He says the first one, the network is very excited about. It's called Hometown Girl, which is their most popular daytime soap opera.
What a terrible idea, first of all. Who wants to watch a soap opera in prime time?
Well, what about Dynasty? What about Dallas? Those were all primetime soap operas.
Those were primetime soap operas. What he's saying is basically, we're going to have tonight, as a special, a 2-hour General Hospital. No, thank you. Just saying. Like, what happens is very, very specific and has to be dealt with. But I'm just saying, if you were to tell me we're putting a soap opera on at fucking 9 p.m. tonight, I would say no one is going to watch that.
The second one, Mitch says, is in trouble. He says it's a musical variety program called The Pittsburgh Steelers at Marineland. Which...
I'm in. Are you kidding? That sounds fucking great. What are they going to do at Marineland? Who is going to fall into the dolphin tank?
For listeners of a certain age, and there's probably no one listening to this that are very, very young, but you have to remember that these kinds of crossovers were the rule and not the exception. We had things like the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. That was a real show that played on prime time.
Not to mention the 1 million variety shows that there were. Look, this is well beyond before the internet. This is well beyond before cable television, where you actually had a choice of channels in different avenues to get word out there and publicize things. If you were a musician in the middle of the 1970s, you were either touring or they were playing your stuff on the radio, or if you wanted to get on TV, you could do a guest spot, or you could do one of these variety shows where you could do 3 of your songs and then the rest of it was just Bruce Valanche written nonsense.
The variety shows were super popular at this point. The Star Wars Holiday Special is a variety show. People knock it and talk about how horrible it is, but that, again, that was the rule and not the exception. That seemed like a can't miss proposition. So
Donnie and Marie was a variety show. You know, Captain and Tennille had a variety show.
The Brady Bunch went from being a network sitcom. They had a variety show where inexplicably the family decides to become a variety show musical act. Even Mike Brady, who didn't really seem to know how to dance or sing. But anyway, let's not judge.
Pink Lady and Jeff, do you remember that?
I do.
The Japanese duo, this pair of Japanese women who were like huge pop sensations in Japan, and then they just gave them a variety show, paired them up with comedian Jeff Altman, and surprise, neither of them could speak English.
That was a Sid and Marty Krofft production. And the thing of that is, because I just recently heard about this coincidentally, is that Sid and Marty Krofft didn't understand that the Pink Lady, is that the name of the group? Is it the Pink Ladies? I don't remember if it was just Pink Lady. I think it was just Pink Lady. They didn't understand that Pink Lady did not speak English. They had to write out their dialogue phonetically because they couldn't understand English.
At what point do you not realize your stars do not speak English?
Too late.
Was
Too
everyone
late.
really stoned? Is that the case? Did they just keep taking everyone's word for it?
It ran for a ridiculously short amount of time.
Like
It
2
ran
episodes?
5 episodes with 1 unaired episode. So it was effectively 6 episodes, but they only ran 5 of them. It's not far-fetched to think of something like the Pittsburgh Steelers at Marineland. I probably would have watched it when I was that age. Hell, I'd watch that now. It would definitely be good for a few laughs, right?
You know they were going to throw a fucking football at Shamu.
Maybe dress up Shamu in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform.
You would catch it
some
in
way.
his mouth pathetically, and like everyone would cheer, and everyone at home would just feel bad.
This was the era of Battle of the Network Stars. There was a show where they would have celebrities do like a circus act. I don't remember the name of it, but this was a big
Circus of
deal.
the Stars.
Circus of the Stars. Thank you. I was struggling for a minute there.
HP, last week I think I was at my most depressed because I found myself watching the Bay City Rollers show, which is available online. They had their own variety show where I think they played Saturday night like 6 times.
Sha Na Na had their own variety show that was on I think it was a Saturday early evening proposition. I remember watching that as a kid. So yeah, I guess you don't have to be a psychic like Jim to see the merit in the Pittsburgh Steelers at Marineland over Hometown Girl. Jim offers his opinion. He says the Marine show is going to win big, and the soap opera is going to get clobbered everywhere except Chicago.
See, now that's where the psychic part comes in.
That's where it comes in because he's very specific that it's Chicago where the only place that it doesn't get beaten in the ratings. Mitch asks Jim if he's in the business, but Jim says, nah, he just gets these hunches once in a while. And as I said, we already know from a couple of episodes ago, Jim the Psychic, that Jim is in fact a psychic. Mitch, however, downplays Jim's suggestion as we fade into the garage.
Downplays it. He's a dick about it. Hey, why don't you stick to driving your cab and leave programming television to me?
He says that, but Jim then proceeds to drive the wrong way on an on-ramp or an exit ramp. So, yes, he should be telling Jim how to drive because Jim can't drive for anything. We fade into the garage, and Alex asks Elaine and Tony why there's white powder all over Louie's cage. Elaine says that she bets it's rat poison because Louie's had a well-documented struggle with pests in that cage. By the way, can you imagine how foul and disgusting that cage is? If he just can't get rid of these pests, he's had cockroaches. It looks like he has mice now. Disgusting. He's eating in there and ugh.
Well, you know, I would think that it would be disgusting because of Louie, but at the same time, Louie does have some self-respect. And more than that, Jeff is back there. And I don't think Jeff is going to let, considering they're constantly in conflict with roaches that are the size of Buicks, that you can't just leave food out. Like, you know, I think he would be on Louie's case. Like, if you want to keep fighting these things, we can't be feeding them and allowing them to attack us with giving by strength we've given them.
Sure, but I could also see Louis, being like high and mighty, like, oh, look, I'm not going to change who I am because some 8-legged creature wants to have a bite of my salami sandwich. No dice, Jeff. I could see him being a prick about it like that, but nevertheless.
I do, but at the same time, I think Jeff, just to fucking, like, not be skeeved out every second when he's at work, would make sure that the cage was clean.
Probably. But at any rate, there's another pest problem in the cage, and now Looks like it's a mouse problem. Jim comes in and asks everybody what's up, and Alex tells him about the powder. And then without warning, I thought they were going to do a cocaine joke. Without warning, Jim takes a taste of the powder, but then he reports that it's just flour. Louie butts in, tells them all to go away. Louie, what he's done is he's put all his flour around his cage so that the mouse or mice will leave little footprints and lead Louie to where they're coming into the garage. And that's exactly what happens. He follows their little footprints and he finds the little hole where they're coming in.
And he discovers the existence of ghosts.
Growing up as a kid watching so much Tom and Jerry that I did, I always thought that that's what mice did. They just put this little neat little hole in your wall that was probably like an inch tall and a perfect like door-shaped hole, and that's how they came into your house. But anyway, Louie follows the trail of mice prints and he finds where they're coming in. Elaine gets upset. She doesn't want a mouse to suffer. She offers to catch the mouse alive, which she reasons
Bring him back alive.
Bring him back alive with
Nardo.
Stephen Collins. She says, well, this will save you money, Louie, because you won't have to spend the money on traps. Louie, being frugal as he is, says,
Can't
well,
argue with that.
I can't argue with it. So yeah, you do your worst, Nardo. Figure it out. Just then, Mitch comes into the garage and goes, it's funny. Whenever there's some kerfuffle, people have no qualms about just walking into the garage whenever. We see it happen all the time.
At least most of the time, someone will come in and say, excuse me, can you tell me where I can find blah, blah, blah? But more often than not, we do have characters who just come like wandering in, like, I know what I'm doing here. As if that's acceptable behavior in like this not only a place of work, but like a dangerous place of work, potentially.
Lockett could be working on a cab and the jack comes free and they crush their foot under a cab. All kinds of stuff could happen, but
you might have to have a conversation with Tony Banta.
It's just not safe. And you're right. Sometimes it's like a relative of one of the cabbies saying, excuse me, can you tell me where to find Alex Rieger? That's one thing. They're coming in with the appearance of somebody who needs direction. But like Mitch just walks in and he's just like, I'm just going to look. Oh, there's the guy I want to talk to, without talking to Louie, without introducing himself. He's just like, I'm going to walk over to that guy randomly and talk to him.
The people who have the right to walk into the cab company and go, hey, Alex, because they know him, don't.
Mitch goes over to Jim and he reports that Jim's prediction came 100% true. Even the bit about Chicago, about the one place that show won the ratings in Chicago. He's blown away that Jim's prediction came true. So Mitch asks Jim for his help. He wants Jim to come to his office, give him hunches about the schedule. Mitch is just desperate. His job, he says, is hanging by a thread. But Jim refuses. He says that he doesn't want to use his talent for gain. Then Mitch plays the Star Trek card, and he says to Jim, you could have saved Star Trek if you did this years ago. And that gets through to Jim, and this convinces him to go and help him. So they leave. Fade to commercial.
In point of order, that's not true. What Jim is doing is not helping anything. He's just picking shows that he knows are going to be popular. It isn't like he's helping the show. He's just saying, that's a winner, that's going to lose.
Because Jim's hunch at that time would have been, look, Star Trek is going to lose big in the ratings. Despite the fact that it's my favorite show, his hunches, like you said, don't boost the ratings for the show. He's just calling it like it is. Like, this show will win, this show will lose. So he would have said, yeah, Star Trek's going to lose. I'm sorry. So yeah, I guess that the reasoning is faulty there.
What is the name of the Greek heroine who's standing on the wall saying, don't let in that horse, it's full of Greeks?
Cassandra.
That's what Jim is here. Like, that would be the situation if they had a Star Trek-like show on at the network at this time. He would be forced to, like, know that his show was going to fail and could do nothing to change it.
It would have been worse for Jim because he would have seen the show failing and had been able to do nothing to help it. at all.
Well, I don't know that it would be worse than watching your city fall because your countrymen are a bunch of morons who are going to let in a giant horse filled with your enemy. But she could see that happening.
I don't mean worse as in the country. I mean worse as in he can see how the writing on the wall, but he's powerless to affect change. But I'm going to push back on that suggestion that Jim could have done nothing, because here's what he could have done. He would have had the knowledge that Star Trek was doomed to fail, but what would have kept him from saying, look, it may fail in the short term, but give it 3 years and this show is going to become big. Trust me. So he could have at least.
So he could have lied, is what you're saying.
He could have lied. Exactly. He could have lied for the sake of his favorite show.
Let me push back on your pushback.
Okay.
What he could have actually done is said, put it at a time slot that is a guaranteed winner based on the popularity of another show.
That would have made much more sense, where he could have seen like, oh, you know what? Star Trek is not meant to be a Thursday night show. You put it on.
I know the Paul Lynde show with the cheese is going to be a big rating success. Let's put Star Trek on after that and see if we can't ride that wave a little bit.
Sure. Because that was really the tale of Star Trek, wasn't it? That they couldn't really find an effective time slot for it and never found its audience or until too late, really.
Well, that and it became garbage by the third season.
Well, yeah, the quality definitely went down, but I think that part of that was the fact that it was not doing well in the ratings to begin with. They started to see less and less reason to put more and more money into it. So maybe Jim could have saved it in his own way.
HP, did you ever see the Barefoot Executive starring a young Kurt Russell? It was a Disney movie from the early 70s.
I'm sure it was on television when I was a kid, but I was probably too young to really appreciate it. So no, he had several of those Disney movies that all
Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, The Strongest Man in the World, The Barefoot Executive, and one more.
All of those kind of swirl together in my mind, and it's hard to know where one ends and one begins. I do, however, the one Disney movie that I remember more clearly than any, there was a movie with Jan Michael Vincent, who played like
the
a
world's
Tarzan.
greatest athlete.
That's the one, the world's greatest athlete. I think Tim Conway was in it. That one, for some reason, I couldn't get enough of that movie. I loved that movie.
Well, I bring up the Barefoot Executive because Kurt Russell's character Dexter, he's the same character in all of these movies, on campus gets involved with television ratings, and they find a chimp who can pick a winner every time. Not saying that they ripped that off for this episode of Taxi. Let's call it an homage.
Inspired by, we'll say. We fade in on B-roll of a massive high-rise, presumably in Manhattan. I'm sure that building is a known building that has a name and a notoriety. I didn't know what it was. It just looked like a giant fucking building that they zoom in on the top of the building. Mitch has a highfalutin office in this high-rise. We cut inside that office as Mitch is talking to Jim in the office. Mitch confides to Jim that they need to come up with a cover story for Jim's role in all of this. Mitch eventually lands on the idea that Jim is to pretend to be a shoeshine boy, which Jim agrees to, which is really humiliating. It's a grown man and he's having to pretend to be a shoeshine boy just so that he can have a cover to help this guy out for no reward at all. I mean, he's not getting paid.
He might
for
save
it.
Star Trek. He's doing it for altruism, but once you start getting kicked around, I'd be like, peace. You can give me a call. I'll tell you who the winners are.
Yeah, it's kind of where we're headed with this. Mitch has one of these big boards in his office that I think we all would imagine a network executive would have, where there's like it's broken out into grids and you have a timeline of every day's TV shows. They discuss the shows that they're considering for Tuesday night. The first one is a sitcom. The second one is a game show, which is, he describes it as an updated Truth or Consequences with celebrity contestants featuring Paul Lynde, for example. Jim loves this show. Mitch says it's more of a summer replacement, but Jim is convinced this is the winner. The game show Truth or Consequences with Paul Lynde. And he goes on to say, you should have this on Friday at 9 p.m. But then Mitch says, well, the competition for that time slot is a new James Bond movie on one network, and then something called Brooke Shields Turns 17, which made me feel a little, yeah, that joke didn't age too well, considering we now know how Brooke Shields was relentlessly sexualized as a child, suffered a lot of damage mentally as a result of this. Here, it's just a throwaway punchline to a bad TV show.
Yeah, and it's basically all the creeps are going to be either watching one network or another. Either they're like just a misogynist on one network or a pedophile on the other.
Pretty much. Jim is certain. You put that game show 9 p.m. on Friday, that's your winner. Mitch reluctantly makes the change, but he makes it clear that he's very depressed that a cab driver is literally doing his work for him.
Imagine saying that out loud to the fucking cab driver who's
He's right
doing
there.
your work for you.
Jim really, really gets kicked around a lot in this episode. And I know that part of that is the point of the episode, but it's still hard to see him trying to be altruistic, but really just getting the shaft.
You know what's funny? If this were any other sort of random character actor in this role, right from the opening cab moment where they have their first conversation, I'd be like, this is a fucking villain. Punch this guy in the face. But because it's Martin Short, for the longest time, I'm giving him leeway.
The thing about the character that Martin Short's playing is that he's not doing this as your typical villain who's rubbing his hands together saying, I'm going to be rich. Rich, I tell you. This is great. There's never a moment where he's not racked with guilt or just flat out depressed that he can't do his job without relying on somebody who has no background in network programming.
Right. It's worse than him sort of wringing his hands together and twirling a mustache and being a villain. It's this crazy narcissism where he can't see anything else. Like, he's using this. He has found a man with a genuine psychic gift that he can bring to television and fucking become the #1 network of all time. And he'd be the guy who fucking discovered him. But instead, he's masquerading like Cyrano, like
Right.
He's picking the things. And then he feels guilty because, not because he's using the guy, but because it's not coming from him. Fuck this guy.
That's a fair point. But at least if he were taking glee in stealing all of Jim's good ideas, I would feel one way.
I would respect
I can see
him.
your point. You would respect him if he was evil, just flat out evil.
If he was like, you know what, I'm just using you, fuck you, like, use the dog door and crawl on out of here. Like, at least he'd be upfront. And at least he'd be aware of his level of evil. This is clueless evil. It's the Albert Camus evil. It's like the worst kind. It's a grind.
But it would be so much harder to watch if you see somebody blatantly taking advantage of Jim right in front of his face and being unrepentant about it. I think that would be difficult to watch.
He's only repentant that he has to do it in the first place.
That's fair. So we fade into the garage, and Elaine and Tony are lugging in this Rube Goldberg type of mouse catching device. It's got like this long hose. It's got bells. It's got all these little doodads and stuff that I can't believe I just said doodads. That's ridiculous. It's got all these things that make noise, and it's supposed to catch the mouse. So they lay it all out there. Alex answers the phone in the center of the garage, and it's for Jim. It's Mitch from the network. Mitch reports the Switch was a success. The Friday night game show featuring Paul Lynde was a big success, and he wants
I could have told you that again.
He wants Jim to come to the office this afternoon.
HP, we did not describe the show where he said, what is that vat hanging over Paul Lynde's head filled with? And he said, oh, melted cheese. You don't want to watch that show? I don't know what the setup is. You didn't need to tell me there was an update of any other show. You just say, what does this show involve? Well, at a certain point, Paul Lynde has a vat of melted cheese suspended over his head. Okay. I
would watch it, but then again, I would watch Captain Freedom's Workout or anything from The Running Man. So I'd watch I Buy That for $1. So what does that say about me? I don't know.
I'd say you love television, my friend.
I would, and I think Paul Lind with Melted Cheese Peril is a ratings winner, and it was it won the night. So good for Jim. Tony asks Jim what the call was about, and Jim announces that the network won the night's ratings for the first time in 2 years, which is a big deal. Although it used to be when we only had the three or four networks, Father Malone, network ratings were so much more of a big deal than they are now. Not to say ratings are not important now, but because the television slash cable landscape is so fractured, it's not, I don't think you see the same numbers. This was much more of a monoculture. So when a show was popular for that night, the majority of people in the country were watching that. And that's you rarely see that nowadays. Even like the Super Bowl doesn't get the ratings that it used to. But this was a time when the Nielsen ratings were king.
I find it hilarious that a show that was pulling in like, oh, only a third of the audience in the entire country were watching your show. That's a loser. Like, what? We're talking about millions of people. Yeah, and the thing is that the network system just shattered to pieces because you could gauge how much each of your ads were worth because you knew how many eyes were on them at that moment thanks to those ratings. So you knew the ad was worth that many millions of dollars because that many more millions of people were watching. Now everything is streaming and YouTube and internets. So who knows if they're getting to watch the ads or not? Who knows to know if a show is a success or not?
Well, let me ask you a question, Father Malone. Were you or did you know anybody who was an actual Nielsen family?
Yes, I do know one. That was me. Yes, I was a Nielsen family.
You had one of those boxes, the Nielsen family box?
No, this was when I was an adult. This is when I had first moved to California. So I received, out of the blue, just a, hey, do you want to participate in this? And it wasn't a box. It was, you would receive a notebook, basically, a little pamphlet.
Okay.
That you would have to fill out your television viewing habits and then mail that in. And weirdly, they had to pay you for it. So when the book arrived, there was always a crisp dollar bill in it.
Is that a down payment on your honesty?
I don't know what it is. I think they have to offer compensation or something like that. But like, so that's them. You're being paid for your time. Mm-hmm. But I was always excited because it was like literally like straight from the mint to your hand, courtesy of the Nielsen ratings people.
I never saw them or had any interaction, but at a certain point, there were special boxes that you would install to your TV that would that could report back, like, okay, you were on channel 5 for 20 minutes, then you changed to channel 7, and I presume they would gather all of this data, crunch it all together, and figure out, okay, everybody watched this show for 15 minutes, but then something happened 20 minutes in that made them decide to change the channel. I assume that's how it all worked.
I think that might have been how it worked previously, but that wasn't my system. And had they offered that, I would have said no. Because I don't want anyone monitoring me minute to minute. That's crazy.
Ultimately, whichever method they employed, my point is that this was a time when this kind of interaction and data was explicitly curried from people. They were desperate for information on the viewing habits of the American family. So ratings were a big deal. I don't know, you never really hear about it, and I know that places like Netflix, they zealously guard their ratings because I don't think they really want people to know what the ratings are for one of their hits, because that would expose too much of their system, I guess.
Yeah, and you know what? If studios could hide all of the box office receipts for all of their movies, they would, because it became such a stupid focal point for the American public to like be tracking what movie's doing well this weekend. Oh, did they drop off 50% after the first week? Who cares? Was it a good movie or not? Shut up.
After Jim talks about the the ratings boom for that Friday night, the cabbies get really excited and they're convinced that this is going to be Jim's ticket out of the garage. But Jim reports back to them that he's getting nothing in return. And in fact, he says he's being treated like a shoeshine boy because that's his cover. Alex gets completely affronted by this whole thing, as only Alex can. He really gets kind of imperious about demanding that Jim get his self-respect back. He says to Jim, this is just ridiculous. You're getting nothing for the work. Why are you letting your... He really gets upset with Jim and asks why he's allowing himself to become a victim. He hates that. Alex gets very, very... He really yells about this. He's really upset about it. Jim asks Alex for help. How can he change? How can he fix this? Alex tells him, the only person you can trust is yourself. And damn it, you need to assert yourself. He says pretty much those exact words. Damn it, assert yourself. Alex yells to Jim that he has dignity, he has value as a human being. And that guy Mitch needs to understand that too. This pumps up Jim, and he says he storms off and he's going to talk to Mitch. But then he kind of skulks back, picks up the fake shoeshine kit, and leaves with it. So Jim maybe isn't... He's kind of hedging his bets a little bit, as it were. So we cut to Mitch's office. Jim storms in and starts yelling at Mitch. Jim says to him he's not going to help him anymore with his job. Mitch has been taking all the credit for his work. Mitch completely capitulates and says, you know what, you're right. I did it because I was afraid I was going to lose my job. He goes on to say to Jim, I did it for this, and he shows him a picture of his 3 kids. And he resolves to Jim he's going to confess. The guilt is too much for him. He's got to confess. Just then, the woman, Janine, from earlier, the network executive who threatened to fire Mitch, walks in and tells Mitch that they're having this big victory party, and why don't you come back down? Mitch, at this point, confesses to Janine that he had nothing to do with the schedule. Jim was the only one who programmed those shows, and Mitch has been taking all the credit for it. And he kind of braces for getting fired. He feels like he's going to get fired. But Janine is very, very sanguine about the whole thing. She says, look, we're always asking advice from people on programming. She says, ultimately, Mitch, it was your decision and your decision alone to actually enact those changes, regardless of who suggests those changes or who tells you that it'll work or won't work. This convinces Mitch not to fall on his sword, and he goes on to tell Jim that he's unfortunately not welcome at the victory party, because Jim is like, all right, let's go, let's celebrate. And he says, all right, let's calm down, Jim. I can't have you go to this victory party. Mitch does say, though, that he's going to work on getting Jim an office and a salary come Monday morning. So he's not all bad. Jim, again, refuses to use his God-given talent for personal gain. But he does make a lame joke about, all right, but you know what? You can pay me for the shoe shines. And Mitch says, well, how much do I owe you? And Jim says, about $150,000. Then we fade to commercial.
Jim's absolutely right. He should have nothing to do with this guy anymore, simply because of the fact that if he's going to treat him like a shoeshine boy, if he's going to treat him like he doesn't actually exist amongst the regular staff, he could at least be paying him. He is a high-level executive. It would cost him virtually nothing of his salary to cut Jim a check.
Yeah, I actually think it would be a dangerous prospect for Mitch to bring in Jim as a junior executive, as it were, because how long do you think it'll be before everybody starts to recognize that Jim is the guy who's going to sort out the network schedule, and he's very, very quickly going to be the one who's going to be put in charge of all of these scheduling changes. So I think it's actually likely that if Jim did start working for the network, Mitch is going to be out of there in no time, because what value does he add at that point? Jim officially is out of the network scheduling business, and that's fine. I guess you, in a funny way, you could look at this as a bit of an aspirational episode, but it's not really, doesn't really fall into the same traps as a lot of those, because frankly, Jim wasn't really that aspirational. Like, he just kind of went along for the ride, and once he realized that he was getting shafted, he said, all right, fine, I quit. So good for Jim.
Well, it was an aspirational episode. It was just a Jim's version of an aspirational episode, which is he doesn't have any.
We have one plot to resolve in the bumper.
Yes, the fantastic mouse hunt.
Yes,
Starring Christopher Walken.
Louie is in the garage alone as this Rube Goldberg mousetrap actually starts to work. All these little bells and things are ringing. You can basically follow the path of the mouse up this hose until at the very end of the hose is a glass jar. And to the show's credit, a real fucking mouse pops into this jar. The thing actually went through the trap. It's actually kind of interesting, like a little
some
trained
stagehand had his hand in that trap somehow and then throws a fucking mouse into a jar. The magic of movies.
You think the mouse was mistreated to get it to go through the mouse trap?
I'm saying it's a possibility.
Perhaps, likely, certainly a possibility. So Louis, for his part, he can't believe his luck. He takes the jar off of the end of the hose. He puts a top onto it, and he's taunting the mouse with what he's going to do with it. He says, maybe I'll flush you down the toilet, or maybe I'll just leave it. I'll let you run out of oxygen. And he starts choking to mock this little mouse. But eventually he's looking at this mouse and he notices that it's a baby mouse, which strikes a chord with him, let's say. He decides to flip a coin to decide the fate of this mouse. Heads.
You're the penguin, not Two-Face.
Heads, the mouse can live. Tails, it's curtains. So he flips the coin and he looks at it and says, oh, that's it, Tails, you're dead. And then he goes, nah, I was only kidding. It's heads, see? And he even shows the coin to the mouse in the jar. And he takes the mouse out the back of the garage, releases him and says, go and never come back. And that's the end of the episode. So that's going to do it for this episode. Now we're going to talk about yellow lights, Father Malone.
What does a yellow light mean?
As is our custom, we're going to grade this from 1 yellow light to 5 yellow lights. 1 is the worst taxi episode. 5 is the best. Furthering our custom, we're going to send it to you first. What do you give Jim Joins the Network?
It's hard because I think I enjoyed it overall. I didn't like the B plot very much, but I certainly enjoyed Jim and all the Star Trek talk. I'll give it 3 stars for Star Trek. I'll give it 3 yellow lights for Star Trek.
3 nacelles for Star Trek you're going to give this?
Well, I mean, that would be weird, but...
That would be weird. So I'm of the same opinion. I gave this one 3 yellow lights as well. I know you do, but I love a good Jim episode. And actually, what's fun about this is Martin Short. He kind of became known for his very manic tendencies. Ed Grimley, everybody thinks of Ed Grimley hopping around the SNL set or SCTV. But in this one, he plays it very, very straight. He has none of the manic tendencies that would mark his work on SCTV and beyond. So I like that about this. He's just a very straightforward, no frills character. That's kind of cool.
A no comedic character almost.
Right. He plays it very straight. I like that. He didn't go nuts. I'm going to give this, 3. It's slightly above average for me. I don't know that this is one that I revisit all that often, but at the same time, it's a fun one. Jim is never not a good time. So 3 yellow lights from me, 3 yellow lights from Father Malone. That's going to do it for this episode of Night, Mr. Walters. Father Malone, where can the folks find you when you're not clocked into the garage?
I have a show called Midnight Viewing. It's on twice a week. You can find that on the Weirding Way Media Network.
As for me, I am in the midst of Trek Fest with Father Malone over on his Midnight Viewing podcast. We're covering the entire Star Trek film franchise from the original episode movies through Next Generation and beyond. Please check that out if you like Star Trek, you just like light science fiction. It's been a delight.
And we're doing standalone episodes soon about non-theatrical Star Trek.
I also host the Noise Junkies Music Podcast, and I have a Bandcamp site, hpmusicplace.bandcamp.com. So thanks for listening, everybody. Please feel free to subscribe to this podcast, write a review, or rate us. We'd love to hear from you. In fact, you can send email to hpmusicplace@gmail.com. For myself and Father Malone, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.